magicians, a deadly fisherman, and a certain yellow electric mouse all getting another cinematic go-round in these upcoming mystery sequels that promise to blow our minds. In 2009, Guy Ritchie brought Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's legendary detective back to the big screen, with Robert Downey Jr. playing one of the most memorable on-screen versions of Sherlock Holmes, alongside Jude Law as his faithful assistant Watson. It was Ritchie's most successful movie at the box office at that point, and a sequel was all but guaranteed, with A Game of Shadows arriving just 2 years later. Even before it was released, it was announced that a third film was already being written. It's been rough for Sherlock Holmes 3 in the years since though, with script rewrites, planned production start dates that came and went, Ritchie eventually bowing out, and then the COVID-19 pandemic putting the project on indefinite hiatus. But then 2023 finally brought fresh news, as Downey's wife and producing partner Susan Downey confirmed to The Wrap that the movie was still being worked on. We still don't have a hard release date though, especially now that Downey is working on his big return to the MCU. But as long as he remains passionate, we're confident it will happen soon enough. 2013's Now You See Me is an inventive heist film about a group of stage magicians who rob banks and the wealthy. The impressive ensemble included Woody Harrelson, Jesse Eisenberg, Isla Fisher, Mark Ruffalo, Dave Franco, Morgan Freeman, and Michael Caine, with all but Fisher returning for the sequel. Now You See Me 2 also added Lizzie Kaplan and Daniel Radcliffe into the mix for another complex and mysterious plan.
Follow me. Follow me.
Okay.
In 2015, a year before the release of Now You See Me 2, it was revealed that the series was destined to be a trilogy. Things went quiet for a bit, but then Eisenberg gave the most hopeful news in years when he confirmed that he had read the finished script and that he expected to be on set within 6 months. The ensuing months saw reveals of various cast members, both new and returning, with July 2024 finally bringing the official announcement to expect Now You See Me 3 in November 2025. 2018's crime drama Den of Thieves wasn't a huge hit, but it nonetheless found a big enough audience to justify a sequel. The original stars Gerard Butler as a Los Angeles detective tasked with bringing down a dangerous criminal organization composed of former United States Marines. But it took a while for the second film to actually come together. During the May 2023 Cannes Film Festival, distributor Briarcliff Entertainment announced that it would be handling the US release of Den of Thieves, Pantera, sometime in the fourth quarter of 2024, with Butler confirmed to be returning. Lionsgate subsequently took over the distribution rights, with the movie now set to debut in theaters in January 2025. A trailer arrived in September 2024, and as Butler promised to inverse, this one's a lot more fun.
And the cop goes gangster.
With the Scream franchise finding new life in the 2020s, it was all but inevitable that some of its horror contemporaries would also return to the big screen. Sure enough, the I Know What You Did Last Summer series has a fourth entry in the works, marking its first new installment since 2006's I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. But unlike that film, which was a standalone sequel that didn't bring back any cast members from the first two movies, I Know What You Did Last Summer 4 is set to have Freddie Prinze Jr. return as Ray Bronson. As of September 2024, fellow OG cast member Jennifer Love Hewitt hasn't officially joined this outing, though she is actively in talks to do so. Little is known about the plot, other than that it will connect to the first two films and will not be a total reboot as previously speculated. It's currently scheduled to be released in theaters on July 18, 2025. Tom Clancy's 1993 novel Without Remorse was supposed to be adapted into a movie right alongside the author's Jack Ryan-verse adaptations of the 90s, but ultimately it wasn't meant to be. Another attempt at a Without Remorse film was undertaken in the early 2010s, but that too fell apart. The third time proved to be the charm when Michael B. Jordan was booked for the lead role, and it finally saw the light of day on Prime Video in 2021. Jordan had in fact signed on to appear in two connected Tom Clancy movies, as Without Remorse was meant to set the stage for a film based on the better-known Rainbow Six, which had already been adapted into a series of successful video games. While the Without Remorse and Rainbow Six books actually have different lead characters, the Rainbow Six movie has been retooled a bit to feature John Kelly from Without Remorse rather than John Clark from the Rainbow Six novel.
John Clark. It's real creative.
As for when we'll finally get to see Rainbow Six, progress has been a bit quiet since 2023, but there's nothing to suggest it isn't still on the way eventually. 2016's The Accountant features plenty of mystery, as Ben Affleck's protagonist Christian has to figure out why his latest client is trying to keep millions of dollars off their account ledger, and why people are being killed to protect that secret. Critical reviews were so-so, but it did well enough financially that a sequel was announced the following year. Due to hit theaters in April 2025, The Accountant 2 brings back most of the principal cast from the original, with Affleck's longtime pal and creative partner Matt Damon signing on to co-produce alongside Affleck. In 2021, director Gavin Karen O'Connor revealed that the plan is to ultimately have an accountant trilogy, though as of 2024, only the second one has been officially announced. If you've been wondering what Misha Barton has been up to lately, then you may have just missed her turn as Agatha Christie-obsessed florist turned amateur sleuth Miranda Green in 2023's Invitation to a Murder. Set in 1930s England, the movie featured some classic whodunit vibes, a rarity for a genre that is more often about modern reinvention these days. True to the authors and the franchises that it was inspired by, it appears that Invitation to a Murder won't just be a one-and-done adventure for Ms. Green. In fact, the franchise already has a name, the Miranda Green Mysteries, with 2 more titles in the works that are both due out in 2025. It's an ambitious undertaking to be sure, but here's hoping that Ms. Green gets to keep solving mysteries for years to come. So get out your magnifying glass and keep an eye out for Murder at the Embassy and the Mystery of the Golden Spear.
What if I can't?
Well, then we probably all die.
2019 was a significant turning point for movie adaptations of video games, as it saw the release of the first 2 video game movies to ever have positive Rotten Tomatoes scores. One of them was, believe it or not, the Angry Birds Movie 2, which came out in August of that year. Arriving a few months earlier was Detective Pikachu, which also set the domestic box office record for video game adaptations, though it would later be bested by Uncharted and the first 2 Sonic the Hedgehog flicks. So clearly, Detective Pikachu had the numbers to justify a sequel. In fact, a second film was already in the works before the first one even started breaking records. But progress was slow. So slow, in fact, that Justice Smith said in 2021 that he was no longer optimistic that the follow-up was still happening. But 2023 brought an update that Portlandia co-creator Jonathan Kreisel was being courted to direct the sequel, thereby confirming that it was still an active project. That remains the last official news on Detective Pikachu 2, but hopefully we'll be hearing more soon. The Holmes family has been quite busy on both the big and small screens lately. In addition to the upcoming Robert Downey Jr. starring sequel and sporadic rumblings of a possible 5th season of the BBC Sherlock, there's also the potential 3rd installment to Netflix's own unique spin on the property, Enola Holmes. Millie Bobby Brown plays the title character, the teenage sister of Sherlock who's trying to make a name for herself in the sleuthing game. Other members of the Holmes clan are involved as well, from oldest sibling Mycroft to their mother Eudoria. These movies offer a lighter, funnier, and more family-friendly angle to the classic franchise, with Henry Cavill playing a much kinder and less cynical version of Sherlock than other portrayals of the character. Enola Holmes 2 arrived in November 2022, and November 2023 brought confirmation that a script for a 3rd film was in the works. Then in August 2024, it was reported that Enola Holmes 3 was set to begin filming in early 2025.
Perhaps you could come to Baker Street from time to time.
After co-writing and directing Doctor Strange, Scott Derrickson began working on its sequel before creative differences led him to abandon the project. So he and his longtime collaborator C. Robert Cargill returned to their horror roots with The Black Phone, which came out in June 2022. With a story about a mysterious child kidnapper known as the Grabber set in 1970s Colorado, the modestly budgeted thriller ended up being a surprise box office hit. In August 2022, Derrickson began hinting at a sequel and saying that the studio was pushing for one after how well the original performed. The Black Phone 2 was eventually officially announced, with most of the original cast set to return, including Grabber portrayer Ethan Hawke. An intended June 2025 release date was also announced, although that date has since been pushed back a bit to October 2025. 2018's A Simple Favor saw director Paul Feig continuing his successful streak of inventive hybrid comedies. Starring Blake Lively and Anna Kendrick as unlikely friends who bond over sharing sordid secrets about their past, the movie did respectable box office numbers, especially considering its fairly modest $20 million budget, and a sequel was eventually announced in 2022. Feig, Lively, and Kendrick are all set to return for A Simple Favor 2, with the only thing known about the story is that it's positioned as a direct sequel to the original. Since the first one came out, Feig's latest releases have been suffering from disappointing critical notices, which might be why this will be his first ever sequel. Lively could also use some positive PR herself these days, after the awkward and controversial news cycle following the release of It Ends With Us. There's no hard timeline yet for the release of A Simple Favor 2, though Feig has confirmed that filming wrapped in May 2024, so it shouldn't be a terribly long wait.
You know, Paul is pulling out all the stops and bringing the fans what they loved so much about the first.
Arguably the biggest ongoing mystery film franchise right now is the Knives Out series, which thus far includes the 2019 original and 2022's Glass Onion. The only real connecting thread between them thus far has been writer-director Rian Johnson and quirky detective Benoit Blanc, played by Daniel Craig. Blanc is set to return once again in Wake Up Dead Man, scheduled to hit Netflix sometime in 2025. Like the previous two Benoit Blanc mysteries, Wake Up Dead Man will feature a new cast of characters played by an entirely fresh set of actors. This time the ensemble of suspects includes Josh Brolin, Glenn Close, Jeremy Renner, Kerry Washington, and Thomas Hayden Church, among others. Nothing is known about the plot, but expect a lot of twists and turns and double and triple crosses as Blanc must once again solve what is likely another murder. It seems as though Craig doesn't yet have the same franchise fatigue he began to experience while playing James Bond, as he told Variety in 2022, "If Ryan keeps writing them, I'll keep doing them."